This is great.
I feel like my whole time has just been about like making sure that she's safe.
Mm-hmm.
It's been super stressful, as I know that everybody's been super stressed out in one way or the other.
Oh, all right, let's take a look here. I've got 7 counselors. Excellent. Is everybody ready to go ahead?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you all very much. I hereby call this March 23rd meeting of the Council of the City of Lancaster to order. Mr. Harris, would you please call the roll of members?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Roya.
Here.
Ms. Baker.
Here.
Ms. Craig.
Here.
Ms. Diaz.
Here.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Here.
Mr. Soto.
Here.
And President Smith Waddell.
Here. All right, let's have the approval of the minutes for the, for the March 9th meeting. I'll hear a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Comments from council? Okay. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Roya.
Aye.
Ms. Baker.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
And President Smith Waddell.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Harris. That moves us to proclamations, honors, awards, and resolutions of recognition. Do we have any, Mr. Harris?
We do not, Mr. President.
Thank you. That moves us to our first public comment period, reserved for those persons who have contacted the city clerk in advance of the meeting. Do we have any, Mr. Harris?
We do not, Mr. President.
All right, that moves us to reports requested by council. Do we have any tonight, Mr. Harris?
We do, Mr. President. We have a report from the Lead Safe Lancaster, the Lead Safe Lancaster initiative of the city.
Excellent. Is Mr. Sosa in the waiting room?
He is.
Ms. Strazo, could we please add Dan Sosa to the meeting?
Yes. Is there anyone else I should be adding or just
Darren
Dan?
Harper.
Darren? Okay.
Darren? Yep.
All right, they're in.
All right.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Sosa.
Good evening.
So would you, I'm not sure how we'll do this, but my preference, if you could give council just a 30-second on what you'll be presenting tonight, and then we'll have you share your screen and do your presentation.
Sure. So I'll be presenting some of the highlights of the Lead Safe Lancaster program, part of the city, and giving you some of the details of the program, what we've done so far, what we plan to do going forward to make Lancaster a lead safe city for generations to come.
Thank you, Mr. Sosa. If you recall, we received a generous grant and matched it with a significant amount of our own city dollars to eradicate lead across the city of Lancaster, which is a huge, indeed multi-million-dollar undertaking, but is something that will have a benefit for the lives of our most vulnerable children for generations to come. So thank you very much to the mayor and to the team who's been working on the Lead Safe Lancaster project, including one Daniel Sosa. So, Mr. Sosa, are you able to share your screen at this time?
Let me check. I believe so.
All right. Please take it away.
All right. So can everybody hear me pretty well?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
What I decided to do for this evening was give this presentation in English, and I will go ahead within the next couple of days. I will also record this presentation in Spanish That way, more residents of Lancaster City will be able to absorb the information in a language that they're more comfortable with. But for tonight's purposes, it will be in English just because of time constraints. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So I wanted to start off by talking about what is lead paint. So I'm sure this might be a review for a lot of the people watching this and for all of our council members, but lead paint is a problem in Lancaster City. It is a big problem in our city for a number of reasons. The biggest reason for that is the fact that we are an old city. Some might say we are the oldest inland city in the US. And because of that, a lot of our houses will have lead paint. Lead is a neurotoxin. Lead paint has no benefit to our biology. Unlike iron or calcium that has a benefit, lead has none. So it is in all cases and in all levels, it is a detriment to our biology, our development, and our well-being as people. It is most harmful in young children because of their developing brains. They have not yet matured in their cerebral function. So any type of hampering to that function with lead is most damaging. We see a lot of kids who have been exposed to lead could develop ADHD, developmental delays. There's even been studies linking lead hazard exposure to autism, and those types of things later on in life can lead to issues with delinquency, the criminal justice system, less education level, lower education level, higher poverty rates. This is a big issue, starting from when we're kids to when we're adults. And so those are some of the long-term symptoms and signs of lead poisoning. But on a more acute level, we see stomach aches, we see headaches. At a more acute level with kids, that could be a sign of lead poisoning. So now we know what lead is and what lead poisoning can cause. The city of Lancaster is making a big effort to deal with this problem. So as President Smith-Waddell mentioned earlier, the city of Lancaster was awarded a grant for about $10 million from the Department of Housing and Urban Development back in 2019. We kind of had a mulligan year in 2020 because of COVID. So we're really behind on this initiative. And we're trying to make a big comeback because this is a 5-year plan. It's a 5-year program. And we kind of lost a good, 10 months because of the pandemic. So the goal of Let's Save Lancaster, the broad goal, is to eradicate childhood lead poisoning. That is the broad goal, to eradicate this problem from our city. And how we plan on doing that in a more measurable level is by remediating, renovating 710 homes in the next 5 years, which is a lot of homes in the southeast and southwest ends of town, which we will get more detail on later on in this presentation. So this is a big undertaking. And in order to accomplish this goal, we need to do 3 things, among other things, but 3 big things. One thing that we really need to do is recruit lead certified contractors, people to do the work remediating lead hazards, renovating homes. It's a big taking on, and you have to be certified to do that. And so we are recruiting. We are always continuously recruiting new contractors in order to accept these jobs and get paid to do these jobs. So if you're listening and you're a contractor, and that sounds like something you'd want to get into, there's going to be 710 jobs to do in the next 5 years, and 710 jobs to get paid to do in the next 5 years. Something else we need to do is, and something else that we've been trying is create a widespread community awareness about lead poisoning and the Lead Safe Lancaster initiative. So most people, when they hear lead, they know it's bad, but they think of water or they think of pipes because of Flint, Michigan, the most high profile case of lead poisoning. But in Lancaster, lead poisoning is a much bigger problem in the paint that we have on our windows, doors, window casings, walls, baseboards, stairs, all around our house, porches. Lead paint can be almost anywhere in the house. And when certain areas that are high touch areas or friction areas, they shed paint chips, they create dust around the house. And then our kids are, walking on their hands and knees, and then they put their hands in their mouth, as we all know, consuming lead into their, and as we mentioned earlier, disrupting their cognitive development, leading to acute problems, long-term problems, and you can't take it back. Once that door is open, you cannot take back lead poisoning. That's a forever thing. And the last thing that I want to mention in terms of how we accomplish our goals at Lead Safe Lancaster is we're trying to engage homeowners, landlords, and renters. All three are eligible for this program. Homeowners, if you own your home, you live in there for a long time, you're eligible. Renters are eligible in conjunction with their landlord. If they both apply, that property is eligible if they qualify for the program. We'll get into some of the qualifications later. We can't achieve this big goal without the help of the entire community. This will not happen. So we can only do this together. That's my overarching message to, if you're to take anything out of this presentation, it's that we can't do this without the help of everybody from the top down. So some of the program details about Lead Safe Lancaster is that we are focusing on 4 census tracts, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next 4 slides. There are 4 distinct neighborhood and street groups that we're focusing on with this program. The homes that qualify have to have a child under the age of 6, either living in the home or visiting the home in some capacity. So grandparents who have, grandkids coming to stay over or spend time, they could qualify. And there are also some income limits with the program. For example, a single person, it's around $40,000. For a family of 4, it gets up, above, I believe, closer to 60,000 or 70,000. Those income limits are detailed on our website, cityoflancasterpa.com/lead. But we will be able to determine that, with an application, or if you wanted to go online and check for yourself on what the income limits are. So these are the census tracts. If you're following along with the slides, they are in the southwest and southeast ends of town. So this particular census tract is in the southeast. As you can see, it goes from King Street south into the southeast corridor on Duke, Lime, Rockland. It might be hard to read the street names on such a screen, These maps are also on our website if you want to take a closer look. But generally, it's homes that are south of King Street, in between Ann and like I believe it's Dorward Street. I could be wrong. But that's a general idea of what sections of the city that we're focusing on. So this is one census tract. This is another one that says further south, as you can see, coming down all the way down Duke Street. Another census tract in the south west end of town. You see Laurel Street, Manor Street being focused on. And then this one has some of the numbered streets and Laurel, Union, Arch, Fremont, Poplar. If you're unsure about whether or not you fall into one of these census tracts, you can always call our office and we can look it up. Or you can go online and find out for yourself. Yeah, I just want to show you guys these maps. They have a general idea of what parts of the city we're talking about. Oh, something I might have forgot to mention with this program is if you qualify, it is free. If you are a homeowner or a renter and you qualify for this program, it is a free program. There will be no cost to you, the homeowner or the renter, if you qualify. Now, if you are a landlord, there is a 10% that you have to pay if you are a landlord. If it is a non-owner occupied residence and you're the landlord, it's 10%. But what that means is, let's say it's a $20,000 project. You pay $2,000, the city of Lancaster would pay the extra $18,000 for that. So you'd be making out on a great deal to have a lot of great work done to make your house lead safe for generations to come. So why are we focusing on lead? Because, and I've seen that, in different comments, it's like, oh, I mean, lead, is that really a big problem? There are other problems that we could be focused on. That is true. There are other problems that need to be focused on. 100% agree. But lead is a very special problem nationwide, but also in Lancaster. There is a direct connection between higher rates of lead poisoning and higher rates of crime, poverty, and lower education. That's been shown in research across the board. And that is also directly connected to this being a civil rights issue. Lead poisoning and lead hazards is a civil rights housing, healthcare issue. They cannot be separated. And so that's why it's such an important thing that we deal with the lead problem in Lancaster. And like I said earlier, this will create safe homes for not just for your family, but for every family that lives in that house after. There has been generations of homes, generations of people that have lived in your homes if you live in Lancaster. A lot of our homes date back over 150 years old. You can create a safe home for families for generations to come. That's an awesome thing that we can achieve when we work towards the Lead Safe Lancaster goals. And I really want you to keep that in mind with this initiative. Something else that is available through the city and through my office with the Bureau of Lead Safety and Community Development is we have a Healthy Homes program that works in conjunction with the lead program, where if there are smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, other upgrades to the house that maybe we could address. If there's a slip risk, fall risk, maybe we could come and upgrade the house. There are dollars available to do that in homes that are also using the lead program. And also, aside from that, we have a critical repair program that the city has had It's a zero interest loan program the city offers to repair water heaters, broken sewer pipes, roof replacements, plumbing, electrical, structural damages that might exist in the house. You know, if your roof is leaking into your bedroom, as an example, we have a critical repair program that can help with those things. The overarching theme is we want healthier homes. We want homes that are safe for your families. And that's something we can do together. And I think the big thing is we don't all know about what's available. So take this information and internalize it, spread the word to your friends and family around the city, and maybe we work together to get there. So my call to action, something I really want you guys to think about going forward with this information, is that, you know, we can't achieve it. Like I said, I'm probably a broken record. We can't achieve this goal without the engagement of landlords, renters, homeowners, and contractors. It's a group deal. We all have to work together to achieve this. So talk to your landlord, talk to your friends, talk to your family. You know, tell them that we can create a safer, healthier community in Lancaster for generations. As an office, we are always accepting applications. So if you think that there's no enrollment time period, we're always accepting applications. Our office is open Monday through Friday. City Hall might not be open Monday through Friday, but our office is open. I'm there every day, and we are there every day, working on these applications, taking phone calls. So you can call us at any time. You can call us at any time. We're only going to answer though Monday through Friday. You can also email our office at any time. We are, you know, always checking emails and working through those. So email us anytime. This is our contact information, our phone number, our fax, our email. If you call and you want to know who to get in contact with, maybe you get the general number, ask for the Bureau of Lead Safety and Community Development. That's us. So yeah, I'd love to answer questions if anybody listening in or anybody on council has questions. I'd be down to answer anything.
First of all, Mr. Sosa, thank you for your work and thank you for presenting to council, for taking the initiative to present this to council this evening. We'll start with questions from other members of City Council. Does anybody have, Councilor Diaz?
Yes, I was curious to know, the 710 homes that you're discussing, are those residents that have already been notified, or are you looking to find in order to help those 710 due to the funding?
We are, like I said, we're accepting applications all the time. So like we do not have the 710 homes picked out. There are thousands of homes in the census tract that we're looking at too.
Okay.
So yeah, no, if you know somebody, tell them to apply, tell them to call us, email us. We have English and Spanish speakers in our office that are we want applications. We want to do more work on this initiative.
Now, in regards to the lead, someone would have to literally go out and inspect to make sure that obviously they have the lead issue. And then moving forward, they can apply to get assistance to get this resolved.
So that's a great point, Ms. Diaz. The way that it works, somebody applies. They don't have to know anything about the lead situation in their house. They don't have to know anything about it. Let's just say they have young kids and they're worried. You know, I live in an old house and I want to, you know, I want to know if there's lead problem, because sometimes you can't see it. Sometimes you can't see it. the city comes out with our certified risk assessors and we check the house. We check over 200 surfaces in the house with our $20,000 lead gun. And we check every surface in the house for lead. And if we find lead, we mark it down. We say, this window, high lead levels, needs replaced. We mark that down, and then we create a scope of work that we send to contractors, and then they tell us whether or not they can do it. So that's kind of like the broad how it works. If we don't find any lead problems in the house, that's awesome, and it won't cost any money, and it's peace of mind for the resident of the home that there is no lead. But if there is, we will mark that down, create a scope plan, and get it fixed. But the resident does not need to go out and get an assessor. We do that.
Okay. The next question, and this would be pertaining to the health of the children. So, example, there's lead. Where would the parent, or what would the parent do? What would the best solution be for them, especially some that may not have health care or may be migrants, for them to get their children tested? Like, do you have something to follow up with them, or do you direct them somewhere else, or is that not in the scope of your job?
So my advice for any family that suspects that their child might be lead poisoned is to contact their family doctor. That's my overarching advice on that. Contact your family doctor. If there is a situation where they might be uninsured, underinsured, undocumented visiting resident of some sort. I don't know if the city has a particular program to help out in those cases. I can find that out, Councilor Diaz, and let you know. But that, yes, I mean, I used to work for Lancaster Health Center, and we ran into that problem often with undocumented patients, and there's a lot of barriers that come into play with that. I don't know if the city has anything to deal with it when it comes to the lead program, but I will find out and let you know.
Thank you, Mr. Sosa. And thank you for the presentation. If you don't mind, if you could forward your slides, if possible, that would be great.
Sure.
Oh, thank you, Councilor Diaz. And if I'm correct, Mr. Sosa will be forwarding. He mentioned at the top of the meeting, didn't you, Mr. Sosa, that you'll also be forwarding a Spanish version for, just to maximize access for residents. So that's much appreciated. Then would you please also, what information you have or instructions for families when they receive that, if they might be concerned that their children might have been exposed to lead or suffering from lead poisoning, please do forward that to council as a whole. We want to make sure that information is known and shared as widely as possible. And thank you, Councilor Diaz, for raising that important point. I have a bit of a technical question, Mr. Sosa.
Sure.
If many of the apartments in our city are in houses, formerly single-family homes, that are broken up into 2 or more units. Do you know at this stage, if a risk assessor goes into, say, apartment 1, because a tenant reached out and says, okay, apartment 1 there's a risk here, we should remediate it. What then happens with the rest of the property?
So we have already had this issue before. We had a building with two different units inside the building, and they're treated separately. So if one landlord owns a home with 2 units, the tenants are an integral part of the application process. The tenants need to also apply. So if there's 2 different tenants, that's 2 different applications that need to go through, different set of documents. It gets a little bit trickier there, and more cumbersome. But yes, the tenants and units are treated as separate households.
If that were the case, is it your practice in the office, like say you do the work in door 1, to say knock on unit 2 and say, hey, this is a thing we found in unit 1. We also need you to fill this out if you would like remediation in your unit as well.
Yeah, ideally, that's what we want to do. Like that would be best to work on. You just knock out the whole building in one fell swoop. That would be best. You know, there are many reasons why somebody might not want to follow through with the process, and part of that is lack of awareness about what the project is that we're doing, and that's part of the reason why I'm here today. Is I want the information to be out there. I don't want people to be scared of you know, big government and you know, people coming into their privacy. We are here. We're trying to create a better community for many generations to come. And we are open for questions. Call us, email us anytime, you know, that you have any questions. We are open and we want to answer the questions and make you feel as comfortable as possible going forward with this to create a safer home for you and your family.
Excellent, Mr. Sosa. Thank you. Questions from other members of council?
I have a question, Mr. President.
Please, Councilor Garcia Molina.
Mr. Sosa, thank you so much for this presentation. When I worked at early intervention, that was like one of the #1 reasons for referrals was lead. So I guess first thing is, I don't know if you have contacted and partnered up with early intervention, but I think this is a really great resource for support coordinators there to be able to pass along to their families, just because with 0 to 3-year-olds with developmental delays, like you were mentioning, this was one of like the biggest things that we were trying to tackle. So I think this is really great. And the other question is, does this program pay, should a family need to stay at a hotel for a week while repairs are being done? Or do we play for displacement temporarily?
The grant and program will pay for a hotel if needed.
Great.
For a family, yeah.
Awesome.
And if the hotel that, you know, that we find doesn't have a kitchenette, there's also a food stipend as well.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, a lot of we try to find hotels that have kitchenettes,
Mhm.
that, you know, people can cook their own food. But yeah, no, that is built into this program.
Great. I appreciate all your work.
And that's a really good shout on a connection with early intervention. I just came into this position, I think it might be a month ago now. And you know, I'm trying to make all these connections, and that is a really good one that I want to follow up on. So if you have a name, if you have a person that you could put me in contact with, that'd be great.
Definitely. I'll connect with you after the meeting. I'll email you.
I just want to say that in 1 month, Daniel has been doing an amazing job and has knocked out of the park our outreach efforts. And we are still advertising for a second outreach person to join Daniel to be our team of 2. And so that job description is available on our website. And if you have thoughts about that, please help spread the word. I think working with Daniel would be great. And this is such an important work to be done.
Definitely.
Other council comments? Okay, are there comments or questions from the public? Mr. Sosa, would you mind unsharing your screen? Yes, Ms. Strazo, please add Mr. Dastra to the meeting. Tony, you know the drill.
Tony Dastra, 757 New Holland Avenue. How's everybody doing?
Doing all right, Tony.
So I am curious to know, my preliminary question is how much money has the city put into this program currently and how much is the projected cost for the program?
I think that's a good question. I believe the grant that we received was 9.7 million, and then we contributed about 1.7 million of our own money. So about 2 million that we've put in and about 10 million that we received as a grant from HUD.
Okay. This is more of a general thoughts than, I suppose, a question. I've been walking my dog around the park, thankfully, because this is a live streamed event. I'm thinking about how generations of families are going to live in these homes for generations to come, and how really a homeowner has to pay rent every year to the city ultimately, because property tax is how we fund a lot of the programs here. So I do find it interesting that we have requirements to participate in this program, and I feel that getting this job done would be a lot more effective if we had a general approach to broadly redoing all the buildings in Lancaster City to be lead-free. And I can only imagine the remarkable increase on property value that would have to ensure that all the properties within the city are lead-free. I'm not, Mr. Sosa, thank you for putting together this presentation. I feel that your job would be a lot easier if the requirements to apply almost were non-existent. I do understand that in the world we've all essentially been raised in, that it's difficult to think about how this as a general investment is good for the city, but these are non-liquid assets that are impossible to move, really. So I do think in the long run, you need to have an approach of the city should be investing money directly into ensuring all the properties in the city are lead-free, regardless of who owns it, who lives in it, because there are going to be generations of families to live in these homes for generations to come, and we should ensure that our housing stock is as great as possible.
Yeah. No, sorry.
No, Mr. Sosa.
Is it okay if I say anything?
Of course.
No, Tony, I mean, I totally hear what you're saying about increasing the availability of this program across the whole city. The guidelines on that were, and the application guidelines are set forth through HUD. A lot of that is through HUD at the federal level. But I'll just give you a little bit of math here. The average cost of a remediation project that is anywhere between $12,000 to $15,000. If we were to take the high end there, $15,000, and extrapolate that with the 710 homes that we're trying to do, it's over $10.5 million. It's a lot.
That's understandable.
Yeah,
that's a big sum over a 5-year period. I totally understand that.
Yeah.
I do appreciate how you said they were HUD guidelines, because it lets me know at least that the city has some ability to be flexible with what we've been given.
Yes, and thank you. Mr. Palmer has noted that these are federal dollars given to the city because we have had a successful program in the past. And Mr. Dasher, I think many members of council share your post-scarcity approach and a wish for a post-scarcity environment. And I think we obviously have HUD guidelines and want to target the most vulnerable folks with the funds that we have right now. And this is an area where the city should absolutely continue to invest. And I think that you would agree that a sharp and immediate uptick in citywide property values might not be the best thing for all our residents without a parallel plan to raise their incomes. But we're happy to be getting lead out of the homes of our most vulnerable neighbors. I'll give you like 30 seconds to close, Tony, and then we got to move on.
Sure. Well, I appreciate how you mentioned sharp increase in property values, because as the property values increase, it's most likely that these jobs will become more and more expensive to do. I don't know that the city has time to wait for applications to be filed in when the statistical cost of a human life is within $6 million plus. $15,000 now is a remarkable savings on the cost of what it might be to develop with lead issues in your body.
That's a well-made point. And Mr. Palmer has also noted that yes, HUD has identified those census tracts for us in their guidelines. All right, I'm going to have to close you out, Mr. Dastra, but as
Sounds
always,
good. Thank you.
commentary. Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay. Hearing none, my sincere thanks to you, Mr. Sosa, and we didn't really get to hear a lot from you, but thank you also, Mr. Palmer. You are doing work that is not necessarily sexy or flashy, but will absolutely save lives for generations, and this council thanks you. Okay, we are going to move on with our agenda if there are no other council items, questions. All right, thank you, Mr. Sosa, Mr. Palmer. All right, interim reports of committees of council, Mr. Harris, do we have any?
We do not, Mr. President.
Thank you. That brings us to our legislative agenda, where we'll begin with ordinances for final passage. Bill number 6, 2021. Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. President. An ordinance of the Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, referred to as the City of Lancaster Parks Ordinance, providing for the comprehensive regulation of parks. The ordinance explains its purpose, establishes rules of construction, defines terms, establishes hours that parks are open, establishes regulations regarding use, including personal behavior, recreational activities, vehicular use, preservation of property, natural resources and wildlife, and merchandising, signs and advertising, regulates group activity and exclusive use, authorizes and describes municipal uses, establishes operational procedures for the issuance of permits, the charging of permit fees, and the creation of rules and regulations, provides for its enforcement and establishes penalties for its violation, repeals inconsistent ordinances, provides for the severability, and provides that this shall become effective in accordance with Pennsylvania law. The title, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. I'll hear a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Councilor Soto.
Yes, thank you, Council President. As we spoke 2 weeks ago, the proposed amendments will modernize the parks ordinance and provide consistent regulations, expectations across all city parks. Specifically, they address personal behavior, including prohibiting smoking, allowing urinating or defecating only in restroom facilities, limiting motor vehicle use, including the use of drones, radio-controlled vehicles, regulating use of non-motorized vehicles, including bicycles, skateboards, skis, and horses, addressing activities such as camping, fishing, hunting, and picnicking, preserving natural and historical resources, and protecting the flora and fauna. The proposed ordinance also clearly and consistently addresses procedures for securing permitting for exclusive use, such as parties requiring permits for specific activities, and enforcement by authorized personnel. That's all I have, Mr. President. I do believe these changes are beneficial to the ordinance, and I look forward to a clear vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Councilor Soto. Director Campbell, did you have anything to add?
No, thank you very much for having us and being able to present this proposed ordinance. Councilor Soto has done a fantastic job in summarizing virtually everything that is encompassed in that proposed ordinance, and we're very much looking forward to having a uniform set of regulations that apply to all of our parks, not one separately from another, and to be able to go forward into the next warm season into this spring and summer with a clear set of regulations.
Excellent. As the regulations, if assuming the proposed regulations pass, should there be changes that affect the, say, everyday regular use of the park for, say, your average or probable, city resident? Where would they go? Would those changes be communicated or posted somewhere that they might have access?
We'll be posting either updated signs or new signs in all of the different parks. And we hope that these will be posted on the website and in other arenas where people would be seeking information about the parks and the park system.
Excellent. Other council questions and comments?
I have one question.
Go ahead.
When it comes to drones, Mr. Campbell, are we specifically talking about all drones, or what's the purpose of banning drones at the park?
It's a good question. We are talking about banning all drones in the park unless there are other extenuating circumstances. So if it was for permitted uses for filming or certain other kinds of activities, these are devices which can often, I mean, not always, can often be used to specifically target or annoy people or to disturb people in ways that cannot be controlled.
Thank you. That was my only question, Mr. Campbell. Appreciate it.
Other questions from council? Oh, Councilor Diaz, please.
If I may, in regards to only because I've seen it, like in Long's Park, where we see people sitting in their cars for a length of time, and a lot of times, unfortunately, it could be pedophiles or even rapists. Is there anything that's written there, the length of time that they can, I mean, I know we can't really tell people they're not allowed to sit in their car, or, their length of time is, cut, but those are things that have happened to the point where I used to run in the park and I decided not to because I could tell that there were just men there that they just didn't seem like they were kosher. Let's put it that way.
So I believe those fall under loitering regulations, and that one can always either report or take note of situations that people feel are suspicious, but I don't think we have any extraordinary aspect in the park regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
If I may, Mr. President.
Please.
Mr. Campbell, I'm sorry if I missed this, but for the drones, is there a permit process if there was a photographer, for example, that wanted to use drones in the, in a park? Is there a permit process for that?
Yes, there is. And one would ordinarily submit such a permit. It would either be for group gatherings or for special purposes. Things like large family gatherings or large group gatherings would also require a permit. And the way that people want to use it or what equipment they want to use would be reviewed and confirmed that it can be used and not be done in a bothersome manner.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Here's a lark of a question that has no bearing on any likely reality, but how high above the city are we authorized to regulate airspace?
I have no idea.
Well, I know that's ridiculous. I just thought, on the offhand, this seems like one that maybe Mr. Hopkins might offhandedly pull out of his pocket, as he has done in the past, because he researched it for some reason, or that you might know, Director Campbell, but again, has no bearing on anyone's real life. So thank you for humoring me. Councilor Garcia Molina, did you have another question?
I was just wondering about the fine. The fine says minimum of $100, up to $1,000. How does I guess, the enforcement process look like?
So we will in fact be promulgating guidance that will follow the ordinance.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Mr. Hopkins,
You want that answer?
you know that I do.
I Googled it very quickly. It looks like FAA regs take over at 400 feet.
Okay. All right. I'm going to write that down for the never when I actually need it. And well, then, Councilor Soto, did you have a question?
No, I do not.
Okay. If there are no other council comments, we will move to comments from the public. Okay. Ms. Strazo, would you add Stephanie Bradford to the meeting? Good evening, Stephanie.
Good evening. Is this thing on?
It is on. If you would give us your full name and your address.
Certainly. Stephanie Bradford, 917 Columbia Avenue, Lancaster, PA 17603.
Great.
Thank you. Couple questions about the parameters on this. The size of the parties that are going to need to be permitted as opposed to just randomly showing up.
Mr. Kimball.
The size is until we lift the COVID regulations, the size is over 25 persons. After those regulations would be lifted, it would be over 100 persons.
Okay. All right. And then the next question is, and I have to say I wasn't completely glued to the Zoom, but you mentioned something about regulating, I think, bikes and skateboards and things like that. What are the, can you give me a description of the goal of that and sort of what will or will not be allowed?
It's basically recommending that people utilize their bicycles on the roadways, on the paved areas, and that they're not riding their bikes into either non-paved areas or into areas that are either protected wetlands or wildlife areas, etc.
Okay. And does that apply to things like roller skates, hoverboards, skateboards? Is that all sort of encompassed wheeled entertainment activities?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That was all I had. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. Ms. Straza, would you please add Mr. Dastra to the meeting? Go ahead, Tony.
Oh, Tony Dastra, 757 New Holland Avenue. I think you guys need to vote to reject these proposals at the moment because treating all things equally does not necessarily mean you're treating things equitably. We all use these parks differently. Sixth Ward Park, which I was just walking around, is used very differently than Binns Park is. And speaking of which, there's a high amount of homeless people that use Binns Park for refuge, and I'm concerned that this will target them. It's, in a sense, a way to continue regulating human behavior in a manner that allows us to sick the police on people. And I don't know that I'm comfortable with that. And instead of posting these changes to the public after they're done and decided on, we need to be asking the residents who live around these parks, hey, how do you use this park? Or in the sense of Binns Park, I suppose it's fair game to ask the businesses around it who help take care of it, the entities around it, like the county government even, hey, what do you see done here? We can't just assume that treating all things equally is treating all things equitably. And to me, I think this will do more damage than it does good for our neighborhoods.
So if I may respond, it is not that all parks will be treated equally. They'll have the same set of regulations available to them, but each park is different and each park has very different characteristics. So in those parks where there are large gatherings, which can be encouraged, where there are, that may allow for public events, et cetera, not only would one seek permitting for those, but one would be able to use or have access to other kinds of activities in those parks, especially the larger parks. The smaller parks where you have where 9/10 of the park is paved and there's only room for a couple of benches or something like that, one would not impose the requirements that you'd be able to have 100 people gathering in a small park like that.
I
There's a lot of discretion.
I apologize, but I don't quite understand how, like, I understand that we're changing things so that, and you're saying that so that all parks have the same tools, but it seems to me like we're going to enforce these all the same way across the parks. I mean, the city is in charge of the parks, so I don't see why we would treat these parks in different manners. It's much more streamlined to give it all the same set of rules and treat them all the same way. I don't quite understand how preventing things like bike riding in certain areas, which I do understand wetlands need preserved, but I just don't understand how this isn't going to be applied across the board, very like a broad brush. And people are going to be shocked and surprised at the changes of the things they suddenly can't do and the things that they are suddenly facing the police for.
Hey, Tony, have you read the ordinance?
I have not had an opportunity to read the whole ordinance, no. Nor have most of the residents of the city.
No, I'm just asking because you're expressing your opinion, and I just wanted to know if you had read it.
That's fair. I have not read the ordinance, nor have most of the residents of the city. Most people do not have the time to read the entirety of the city code, but we do our best.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Tony. Mr. Campbell, you were answering, I believe.
So we are one of the challenges that we were trying to address was the fact that two otherwise similar parks would have sets of ordinances that were not necessarily consistent, and therefore anyone arriving at any particular site would not necessarily know what is the common practice for what happens in the public spaces of the public parks. It is not intended to be a restrictive piece, except to the extent that extraordinary uses, such as we encountered in the course of this last year, where people would put motorized vehicles in the pond, we didn't necessarily have anything that would say that you cannot do that. So you recognize that, similar to most municipalities throughout the country, having a consistent parks ordinance was going to be a useful thing, rather than one where you, when you get to the park, you have to figure out if this is under the parks regulations or under a different set of regulations.
Was public urination explicitly prevented in the previous ordinance, since I have not read it?
I do not believe that it was specifically called out.
That will hurt the homeless the most until we get public facilities at all of the parks. It's still not done at the Barney Yule Plaza, and we closed the ones that are underneath the City Hall, or the former City Hall, not the current City Hall. I'm talking about the original City Hall. We need to open more public facilities if we're going to broad span say that this action is now illegal. I understand that it's common sense to say public urination is not good, but some people frankly do not have the choice.
Mr. President, if I may speak to that. Tony, I really appreciate everything you're saying, but specifically when it comes to public urination and parks, I think here my primary factor is protecting children. And public urination is, well, I recognize what you're trying to tackle at the same time, but that is definitely something that personally, I don't think that debate is appropriate right now, just given the fact that we're talking about parks and protecting children, and not necessarily like targeting our homeless population. I think it's more of a protective factor than a targeting.
I understand that as more of a protective factor, and I do appreciate your comments, but for the reason that I'm debating this right now, I do believe that these changes are not appropriate, and I do appreciate you all listening.
Of course, Mr. Dastra. Thank you. I don't believe Ms. Strazo, would you add Ms. Bradford to the meeting? I think she used about 30 seconds of the time allotted to her, so.
Thanks for readmitting me.
Of course.
Two questions. In crafting these ordinances, there are two ways to handle it. One is to use the most narrow definition, like a gathering of two people is a.
Oh, just hit me.
I apologize.
Sorry, that was my fault. I hit the wrong button.
Okay.
Sorry.
Am I back?
You are back.
Houston?
A gathering of, I believe you were saying?
So for instance, you could craft ordinances so that they are quite encompassing or quite narrow. So a gathering of two people might need a permit, or a gathering of 200 might need a permit. So my question is, did we go for the more encompassing version of this code or the more narrow? And then follow-up question, since I've probably now used another 30 seconds, is given what Tony brought up, and given I know the commitment of the council to working with housing issues and mental health issues, and the awareness of the council, how is this information going to be disseminated to people?
Did everybody else lose Stephanie, or can you still hear her? Okay.
We lost her.
Okay. Well, I think that's worthwhile. I'll wait for Stephanie to come back, but while we're waiting, I think it is worthwhile, for example, that updates to the parks ordinance, if new, changes or what have you are going to be posted, that they be shot over to, say, the rec commission or the mix or the boys and girls club, where our, youth may congregate or interact, and the school district as well, for that matter, so that we're all operating on the same level of legal awareness. Would you please add Stephanie to the meeting?
She's in and she's unmuted.
Oh, I
Stephanie.
just saw her hand go up again.
Yeah.
I apologize. I don't know why I cut out, but I appreciate what you were saying. So I don't want to say there's a homeless problem, because the problem is homelessness, not the people who are homeless. But those are the people who are going to be very surprised if suddenly they're confronted by police for behaviors and activities that they're used to being able to do. So my question is, how is it going to be communicated to this vulnerable population, and how are they going to be redirected to handle their needs?
So there's nothing in this ordinance that is dramatically affecting things that can or cannot. I think that Director Campbell has talked about just aligning these rules and promulgating for consistency across parks, but there's nothing in here that is radically different. As it relates to updating and sharing with partners, I do agree with Council President in terms of the ways in which we will go about supporting and disseminating this information. There's also going to be signage. That signage will be in English and Spanish. And we're also working with a lot of the parks. A lot of these, how all of this came to be really is the result of a lot of community conversations, questions and input that DPW manages on a day-to-day basis as they're out cleaning parks, mowing, doing all of the maintenance that's required, as well as the community groups that have adopted parks. So whether that's Linear Park, Musser Park, Culleton Park, that's associated with SOE, there have been a lot of conversations about what's happening tonight. So I just want to put, Stephanie, just place this in the context of, some of the concerns that are being raised tonight, also by Mr. Dastra, that this isn't, we're not just pulling this out of midair. This was a year's worth of work in the making and is culminating tonight with a.
And Stephanie, I'll also note that with specific regard to public urination and public defecation, those things are already prohibited by law elsewhere. And they're just included in this ordinance for the purpose of alignment. There's not a new crime or penalty being established in this ordinance. And I think that's important to clarify.
Okay. I don't know if I'm still on or not, am I?
You're still here. We still got you.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. I'm not trying to say let's scrap a year's worth of work at all. I'm asking about communication because communication is where a lot of hard work gets scuttled. So
Yes.
I'm primarily concerned about the communication piece of it, because if people are surprised, especially during a global pandemic, as the seasons change, it doesn't always go well.
Agreed.
So just asking about the communication piece primarily.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Director Campbell, did you have anything else to add on the communication point?
Only that I'm hoping that we will promulgate it as broadly and widely as possible. I'd love, when I'm having meetings with community groups, to be able to raise to them that these exist and that they can be found in a variety of different places. I'm very proud of the work that we've done to try to do the alignment and to try to create an environment which is welcoming to everyone who wants to be able to use the park. So I'm very happy to not only explore a variety of ways, but reach out to our communications team, which also includes the neighborhood engagement department, of how we promulgate and make sure people are aware of these kinds of changes. We're also initiating a series of public service announcements that hopefully will start to be available in the next month or two. And one of those can very specifically focus on the use of the parks.
Thank you, Director Campbell.
If I may, President.
Councilor Diaz.
I do have a question regarding the camping. It's evident that we do have the homeless camping in Bin Park. So can you tell me how that has been addressed in the past and how would that be addressed in the future?
Mayor, do you want to?
Yeah, I can, or Council President, if you want to add in or start.
Sure. Generally, the way, my understanding of how that's approached in my work over at the Lanco My Home, or the Coalition to End Homelessness, or what have you, is that largely in public spaces where it doesn't interfere with the general use or enjoyment of the park or block a sidewalk, it is allowed. And there is consistent use of some public spaces for that purpose. And indeed, I have found a number of the folks who use that space for that purpose to be, shall we say, protective of their community and really forthcoming with identifying solutions for the use of that space. Where we have previously run into trouble is that not all of what may appear to be a largely public space is actually public property. So in the case of Binns Park, the overhang towards Chestnut Street and the Chestnut Street side of the county government center, those are public property. The overhang closest, however, to Orange Street belongs to Wells Fargo or whoever owns that part of the building and is not public property. And so what the coalition does is we communicate via our outreach workers to folks what is and isn't public property, and where they are allowed to sleep. And of course, whenever we have the opportunity, we offer people shelter or alternative arrangements. And if we're in what's called code blue, where there is inclement winter weather or the temperature is below 19 degrees, we offer them immediate, no questions asked stays at a shelter or a hotel to keep anybody out of the cold. Though, of course, for a variety of reasons, not to put blame on any unhoused person. That offer is not always accepted. Mayor?
I think that pretty much sums it up. We continue to work with homeless outreach workers to build relationships and develop rapport with individuals. Especially, we have a number of people who are long-term, who are sleeping out of doors and wanting to get to a place where everybody is in safe housing with basic necessities being met, including running water and other facilities that we rely on every day. And so that is part of the work of the Homeless Coalition, and that is part of what the federal ESG dollars and CDBG dollars that the city has passed through, totaling over $1 million of investment in homelessness over the last year. And we have another tranche of additional funds that will be going out, totaling about $800,000. We have just an incredible opportunity to build capacity as it relates to homelessness here in our community, and the coalition is leading that effort.
The only reason why I brought that up is there is one gentleman that is, he's very fragile mentally, and he is all over the place. So I was just curious, when he camps down to rest in his little corner, that nobody is like disturbing him, because I can tell that, you know, he could, he really needs someone in the psychiatric, I would say, hospital to speak to him, even though he's very nice and mild mannered, but I know that he is very unstable.
Yeah.
We appreciate that, Councilor Diaz. Other council or public questions or comments on the park ordinance? I'm going to cut it off in a second. Going once. All right, Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Royo.
Aye.
Ms. Baker.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
And President Smith Waddell.
Aye. All right, that brings us to Administration Bill number 7, 2021. Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. President. An ordinance of the Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, amending Chapter 125 of the Code of the City of Lancaster, discrimination, to allow appointments of alternative members of the Human Relations Commission, to require at least one member of the commission to be fluent in Spanish, to change the name of the Board of Directors to the Human Relations Commission Advocacy Council, and to require, at City Council's discretion, oral presentations of commission reports, to provide for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, provide for the severability of the ordinance, and provide that the ordinance shall become effective in accordance with Pennsylvania law.
I'll hear a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I'll take this one. So this is just in line with the changes that we've discussed at committee and at the last council meeting. Some updates to get us back on track with the Human Relations Commission. And, you know, some of those things are obvious. They're public relations items, that is to say, removing confusion about which organ of the Human Relations Commission does what, and just being clear about the nature of our community requiring a member of the Human Relations Commission to be fluent in Spanish to fully engage with our community as a whole. And this is not what this council perceives, I think, as the last word on the Human Relations Commission, but as part of a rolling series of updates that include ordinance changes and new additions to those two boards. But you all have the text of the ordinance. I'm happy to answer further questions. I am excited at the level of engagement that this council really has turned to a deeper engagement with the chairs of those two bodies so that the HRC can do what it's supposed to do, which is to serve the people of the city of Lancaster. Councilor Beke.
Thank you. I just want to echo your sentiments that these are certainly not the last changes to this ordinance, but important structural changes, including the addition of the alternate commissioners to ensure that there is a quorum, which I know that has been an issue in the past. And so to make sure that our ordinance is effective, at first you have to have commissioners be able to meet. So this is an important first step of many larger steps to come.
Other council comments? Councilor Garcia Molina.
So there is a semi-annual report that is being requested. Should council have questions for the commission, are we now able to request that they present themselves, or is it just at the semi-annual reporting?
So what I don't want, and of course the will of council is its own. What I don't want is for the members or the chairs of the Human Relations Commission and hopefully soon Advocacy Council to feel as though they can be hauled in front of council at any time, like we're the principal. But we thought that regular reporting was important. And to put the discretion as to whether that is an in-person or a paper report, to have that rest with council. The HRC is one of the, as you know, one of the most important sort of boards, commissions, and authorities in the city. And I think especially right now, we need direct engagement. So that being said, they are the new board or the new commission and advocacy council chairs have set up specified emails that are reserved for their positions, much like we have. And so they can be communicated with directly for informational purposes. Ostensibly, Councilor Garcia Molina, council can request a report at any time, but these ordinance changes would make semi-annual or would make it as described in the ordinance a requirement by law.
Okay. So that makes sense. I think for me, because you were hitting it on like the head of like, this is one of the most important bodies. They deal with the most important work of discrimination in our city. I don't think it's necessarily us being the principal and trying to develop that relationship at all. I just personally think that there should be something in place that should emergencies arise or specific situations arise where we do need to convene. I think especially given the history, it's not a matter of like trying to slap anyone on the wrist. It's just so that we have the capacity to convene and everyone has a responsibility to convene. I think that's the perspective that I'm coming from, of wanting to add that in, not so that we're the oversight body or the one that's making the decisions or to seem like we're policing anyone, but just so that we have the possibility to convene and ensure that we are all have the capacity to. And that's what I would want to see in here.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense, and that is also the perspective with which I approach it. I think my reservation there is I also want to take into account the experience of being the board or the commission and council chairs, and it's important to have some regularity in reporting so that people know what to expect. Should something egregious occur, I think council would be within its rights to request a report on some egregious happening or in an emergency situation. This makes this report a requirement of law, which really should be understood as both a responsibility for them and a responsibility for us. We also have to make space for that on a semi-annual basis. But I would not interpret the lack of some specific note that says, council can require a report at any time to indicate that we do not have the power to request a report in some exigent circumstance. But that being said, my leaning would be to pass this ordinance tonight, and as we continue on this train with the Human Relations Commission and its Advocacy Council to consider additional ordinance changes, because surely some will be necessary in the future.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Diaz.
Just a quick question. When you're saying reports, would that include reports related to complaints? Is that reports related just in general with the maybe the police? What exactly does it entail?
Yeah, the Human Relations Commission, their report would entail a summary of their activities over the period since the previous report. So meetings held, expenditures made, say new hires and additions. The report does not, in its broad requirement, specifically require that they review each case with us in excruciating detail. Though again, we should, and this is really a question for Barry, a particular report particular case may be the subject of communication to council within the legal bounds of confidentiality, should the need arise. And I would add, where the ordinance does not make those things specific, that the counselors who are the chair and members of the personnel committee would absolutely have leeway to indicate to that organ what it is they would like to see at the semi-annual report, because it is the boards, commissions, and authorities are ostensibly that committee of council's part of the store.
So what I'm getting from that would be more or less like metrics, benchmarks, percentages.
Yeah, so we'll ask, we'll be talking about numbers of cases, we'll be talking about how those cases resolved, and we'll be talking about how funds were spent over that period of time.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you, Councilor Diaz. Other council comments?
Mr. President, is there anyone actively investigating cases at the moment?
So that's an excellent question. Thank you. The investigator's phone is currently being answered by Mr. Diggs, who is acting as chair of the Human Relations Commission. And he is in conversation with multiple would-be investigator candidates at this very moment. We had an investigator. As you know, we severed our relationship with that investigator. There was an acting investigator in the meantime, and now the commission chair is looking at several candidates for investigator, hopefully to move forward as quickly as possible, because we do need somebody full-time. I've also asked Mr. Harris for information about the York Human Relations Commission. So, he's doing research on that so that we can look at how we might continue to evolve this organ of city government. I'll also note, though it is not part of the ordinance, that the administration has been kind enough to provide ongoing staff support for the Human Relations Commission and Advocacy Council. Mr. Barry Handwerger, our solicitor, will be acting as the staff liaison to that body, much the same way or in a similar way that Mr. Douglas Smith acts as the staff liaison for the Planning Commission, or Suzanne Stallings acts as the staff liaison for the Human Relations Commission. Okay. Let's add Stephanie to the meeting, Mrs. Strazo.
Thank you. Can you give me a 1 to 3 sentence summary of the goal and purpose of the commission, please?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes, short summary of the goal and purpose of the HRC.
I can. Can you trade me by giving me your full name and address? I'm sorry, we have to ask for it every time.
I thought once it was a matter of record. Stephanie Bradford, 917 Columbia Avenue.
You don't need to, I don't need your zip code.
You don't need my zip, 17603, just in case it comes up later.
So on the city website, there's a what we do. The Human Relations Commission positively promotes the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the commission really has two general duties. It is to investigate complaints of discrimination that would violate the discrimination ordinance of the city of Lancaster. That's thing one. And to positively promote equity, justice, human rights, and anti-discrimination. And that is the purpose of what we hope to, after this meeting, call the Advocacy Council. So it's not just to say to adjudicate on claims of discrimination, that's part of it, and to promote equity throughout the city, and that's the Advocacy Council's job. So 2 jobs, 2 chambers. Does that make sense?
It does, thank you.
Yep. Was that everything, Stephanie? Oh, yep, I guess it was. Ms. Strazo, please add Mr. Dastra to the meeting. Been a while.
Has it? I think it has.
Go
Tony
for it.
Dastra, 757 New Holland Avenue. Although I am always the critic, I do want to say that I appreciate the city taking on the efforts to expand on this body, or rather this organ within the body. I appreciate the metaphor there. And I do feel as though it's great to see the city doing this work when the county government, frankly, fails to take on this responsibility. And we need more of this leadership all around the country, frankly. So thank you for expanding on this. And also, I very much appreciate how there's going to be a requirement to have a Spanish speaker. That is wonderful news for me to hear. And especially as the Spanish speakers in Lancaster continue to be represented, I hope we also consider other smaller populations that may have fluency barriers, such as Vietnamese, Nepalese, and otherwise. Thank you, guys. Like, this is honestly really good news.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra. All right. Are there any other public comments? Okay. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Baker.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
And President Smith Waddell.
Aye. All right. I believe that concludes our legislative agenda and brings us to our second public comment period, reserved for comments on items not on the agenda. Keep your comment to 3 minutes. Keep it respectful, please. And of course, begin with your name and where you live. Have at. Surprise, surprise. Mr. Dastra.
Tony Dasher, 757 New Holland Avenue. Well, you said I could have it. So my public comments are actually related to my thoughts earlier about how homes and property is non-liquid assets. I think we need to start considering the fact that people are coming back to cities. People are coming back to cities, and we have a lot of work to do to make sure we are prepared for the influx. I do have a lot of concerns about the direction the city's taking in some regards because of the way it will affect property values. Since an eminent domain procedure, for example, a city's mechanism to stop something for the citizens that maybe they disagree with, I think we are putting that option at risk by increasing the values of the city uncontrollably. But in any case, I'm going to also segue into the fact that auto loans are one of the highest loan default rates in the country, and that's a liquid asset. So we don't see as much of a crisis, and it detriments our population greatly. And we already have parking issues. We need to figure out how we can move people from these non-liquid assets in a more effective manner and make sure that, I said to someone the other day that people need to own property in the city, but I'm starting to think that maybe that's a wrong-headed way of thinking, and that we need to focus on the net worth of our population who's here now, and how can we increase that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra. Please add Stephanie Bradford to the meeting.
Thank you. Stephanie Bradford, 917 Columbia Avenue, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Unit 142. That part, reverse it, please. Do the thingy over the notes. 17603, just because we all need to know that. I'm curious about the Willow Valley project that's going to be taking place possibly in the old Lancaster newspaper's office buildings. I was reading a little bit about it, read the newspaper, did some math, realized that Willow Valley is somehow investing approximately $340,000 per resident of that building. I did the math. And I just wondered where we were in the process of that project actually happening. Are we at the point where it's come before council yet? And yes, I know I could have read all the minutes and the agendas, but it was way more fun to do this.
Thank you, Ms. Bradford. My thinking is that the person best equipped to answer that question would be Director Delft, if he is willing to. But of course, I believe the mayor could also answer that question. So really, to your preference, Mayor.
Chris can jump in, that would be great. My understanding at this point is that we have so many projects going, I just have to.
Not to interrupt, but it's the one that's sponsored by Willow Valley.
No, I know which one. It's just that they're all in different land development processes, and I know that it will be coming back to. It will be coming back to council at some point related to their sewer planning module, but I believe that this one goes next before the planning commission. Is that correct, Mr. Delft?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. The project has been before the zoning hearing board already, and before the historical commission as well. The last conversation that we had before council was related to the historical commission decision. It still does go before planning commission, which is part of the subdivision and land development ordinance process. There is also, the mayor did mention that there's a sewer module that will come before the council, which is really just a confirmation that there's sewer capacity within the city system, which is a regular action that we bring before the council for most land development projects.
Director Delft, will it also, just so that Stephanie is aware of the full breadth, will it also end up needing to go before, say, Traffic Commission or Shade Tree Commission?
My goodness, I will have to put together all of the stages of approvals, but yes, my understanding is it does go before Traffic Commission and Shade Tree Commission as well. And actually, this is maybe a good segue. Something that we have been working on internally in the department is a flow chart for the development process This is actually something that we have on the website right now as part of our subdivision and land development ordinance page. So citizens can take a look at that, but we're going to take a second pass at it and see if we can illustrate it in a way that is more user-friendly and accessible. That's something that we're planning to do in the coming weeks.
Mr. Delps, can you just say how many land development applications were processed last year?
Yes, we had 35 new applications last year in total. Those were new applications. I'd have to go back and look at how many were current. It's usually, we usually have about 50 running at any given time.
Thank you.
Do I have time left?
You do, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of questions I understand if they can't be answered this evening, but there is an emphasis I feel on 55+ communities in Lancaster. And I'm sure there's economics behind that, but I also know that unless these communities are paying living wages and otherwise contributing to the economy, that the families, the young, I think we're up to Gen Zers being able to rent by now, things like that. I'd like to know what benefit it is to the city as a whole to be so focused on 55+, and especially this level of 55+, which is quite luxurious. And thank you for bringing up the traffic impact part, because I'm always like, has there been a traffic study? Why hasn't there been a traffic study? So thank you for mentioning that. So I'm just wondering about, in general, the emphasis on the 55+, and wondering about studies that describe or demonstrate the overall economic benefit to the people maybe 3 to 4 blocks south of the luxury 55+ community.
So I'll start with that. If I can, Stephanie, this is Denise. I've been asking these same questions about the number of senior living facilities that are coming into the city or have expressed interest to develop. So we have everything from Longcrest on Walnut Avenue, which was developed, to Landis Valley on King Street, to the conversation about Willow Valley. And I've been trying to understand sort of the population demographics and what this means, and what's happening with this increase in demand for senior housing. And I was reading that by 2035, an estimated 1 in 3 households, 1 in 3 will be headed by someone who's 65 or older. And so the number of people who are going to be part of this age bracket is increasing exponentially, which is why you see so many senior living facilities being contemplated, not just here in Lancaster, but across the country. And specifically in Pennsylvania, we also have, as part of our demographics, one of the things that Pennsylvania is noted for is that we do have a significant older population, in large part because we don't tax retirement income. And so that is just one of the things to consider. And I was just reading this Harvard report today on projections and implications for housing a growing population, older households, 2015 through 2035. And I'll be happy to send you a link to that. I didn't get all the way through it, but it was helping me sort of contextualize these projects. The other thing is that the city isn't directing or recruiting these projects per se. Goes back to something Mr. Dastra mentioned, which is that the cities are seeing an influx we saw sort of the great migration out of cities. Now we are seeing that trend being reversed, and that's a trend that has been happening for some time. As it relates to the benefits of these projects, one of the things that I want to talk about is that with the exception of the Presbyterian Home Project, all of the projects that are related to 55 and over yield a few positive benefits, especially if you would talk to the school directors, is that they're bringing taxable income without adding additional students to the school district. And they are generating a considerable amount of tax revenue for the district. As you might know, the millage rate for the school district of Lancaster is approximately 22 mills and the city is 11. And so when you look at what revenues are going to be generated without additional burden onto our school system in particular, that is a consideration, as well as the economic impact of this. And if you stick around for a little bit longer as part of my comments tonight, I will be talking about housing and some of the things that we're noting at this particular moment, Stephanie, and I'm happy to have more of a conversation about this as we move forward.
Thank you. That's very clear information. I very much appreciate it. If I may ask, which I'm going to, if I have the time.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I'll try to speak quickly but clearly. There was recently passed an ordinance that required that there be affordable housing as part of housing development. Is that part of any 55 plus community development as well? I hope that question made sense.
Mayor, I could actually perhaps answer a piece of this question, which I think is useful. At the last couple of meetings, I had spoken about the federal home funding that we use to subsidize affordable units in certain projects. And in the past, a lot of that home funding, the affordable housing funding, had gone to senior living projects. This year, we had an evaluation committee, which was made up of city officials and then county officials as well. And as part of that selection process, there was a preference for what's called general occupancy housing units. So there was a recognition that funding had gone to senior homes, senior housing in the past, and both the county and the city were looking for, and in some ways giving preferential points to housing projects that were looking for general occupancy units, so for other age groups, if that's helpful.
That's very good information. Is it possible to do it without federal dollars?
Yes.
Chris, Stephanie, I'm gonna, I actually think this is a very important conversation, and I hope that you'll, one, continue this by email or bring it up at an ensuing council meeting. And I would love to hear a longer form answer from Director Delfs about if that is possible to do without federal dollars and how we might if it is. But I'm gonna call time on this one, unfortunately.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Okay, any other public comments? If there are none, I will move us to the report of the mayor.
Thank you, President Smith-Waddell and Council. Tonight, I wanted to give you a brief preview of what's to come over the next 2 months as it relates to housing. This is very timely. April is Fair Housing Month, and this month is intended to recognize the Fair Housing Act passed in 1968 after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It was the third significant piece of legislation, as many of you know, that addressed discriminatory practices, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and Fair Housing Act. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in the sale, rental, and financing of housing based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. It was intended to address discriminatory practices and reverse housing segregation that was advanced through the New Deal, commonly referred to as redlining. More recently, efforts have been made to expand the definition of fair housing to include disparities in housing and access to opportunity, truly integrating affordable housing in all communities, while also ensuring compliance with civil rights and fair housing laws. In this way, I've come to associate fair housing with affordable housing, though I recognize that affordable does not always mean fair. Over the next 2 months, you'll be seeing a lot more regarding housing. We will be launching a fair and affordable housing page on the city website with frequently asked questions and answers, and focusing our blog and social media on housing issues. You can expect to learn more about how subsidies work, the investments the city makes each year toward preserving or producing new housing, and including support for those who are experiencing homelessness. We are also in the process of creating a map of approved plan and proposed land developments in the pipeline, which includes land use and number of housing units by project, including affordability. This speaks to the number of projects that are on deck that Mr. Delfs mentioned earlier, as well as sharing the illustrated public process approval chart around land development that also Mr. Delfs mentioned, to help the public understand the stages of development and when stakeholders can review and comment on development projects in the city. And to really provide some more clarity about what we have some of the most progressive zoning ordinances in the county as it relates to density and what is zoned by right in the city of Lancaster versus what requires an ordinance. So this is going to help, I think, everybody understand the steps in the process and where council has leverage and also where public input can really make a difference. We'll also be rolling out the city's 5-year consolidated HUD plan, which serves as a framework to guide housing and community development investments. This plan will be released on March 26th for a 30-day public comment period, and it will be presented to council on April 5th. And so this is really an opportunity if you want to take a deep dive into some of the data. And this plan requires quite a lot of legwork in order to prepare. And we'll also be releasing the findings of a housing affordability study that was commissioned last year by the city, which is taking another look into supply and demand of housing in the city of Lancaster. And we are anticipating the results of that study in May. And most importantly, we'll be launching a Take Action page where we'll spell out advocacy and engagement efforts for anyone who shares a belief that housing is a human right. In addition, I wanted to provide council with a very quick snapshot of where we stand right now related to production and preservation efforts. On the production side, Lancaster City is seeing a building boom. You guys are all in the know about this, with more than 1,500 units of housing and development, more than has been developed at any one point in recent history. As well, because of public support and the efforts of the administration and you all, council members, more than 10% of the units in the development that are being proposed will be affordable, many of which will reverse redline discriminatory practices through significant development in the Northwest. On the housing preservation side, literally ensuring the longevity of our housing infrastructure, our property maintenance inspectors launched a property condition survey last December of every parcel in the city, all 18,656 of them. Armed with an app specially developed by our Public Works GIS team, inspectors set out to view and evaluate each property. They looked at both the parcel condition as well as the condition of the structure. Walking block by block, this special effort was diligently carried out over a 10-week period. And this will really help inform our inspection protocols moving forward alongside our lead abatement efforts, which you heard about earlier this evening. So with only 1 in 4 people who qualify for housing support receiving any assistance, we know this national housing crisis. We see it every day and it's beyond frustrating, and you all have been frustrated by this as well. Local governments like Lancaster City have few options to provide new solutions without also raising taxes on our residents who are already the lowest income, most highly taxed residents in Lancaster County. For this reason, we have to have support from outside of the city, including county, state, and federal support. Overall, government subsidies at the state and federal level have not kept up with demand. We know this. In fact, those resources have decreased, leaving fewer options and the need for more creative approaches and increased advocacy. You'll all recall that when Claude and Dana were presenting about the many hurdles that they need to jump through to secure housing, that there are very limited LIHTC credits that are available at the state level and very few resources that are coming from the federal level. And although we pass through all of our federal home dollars to support projects, we know that our allocation of home dollars is woefully insufficient in contrast to the need. So over the course of the month of April and May, I am going to ask you to help me elevate issues of fair and affordable housing with our community, and most importantly, raise our voices to our elected officials in Harrisburg and Washington, D.C. as they consider the rules of the American Rescue Plan Act to allow us to utilize funds toward affordable housing. I ask you to join me in asking that housing also be included in future infrastructure investments. You'll note that President Biden is planning to introduce an infrastructure package, and it is very important that housing is included in that infrastructure package. We need to see an unprecedented investment in affordable housing from the federal and state government. And when we do, we will be ready to put it to work here in Lancaster. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Hold on a second. Alarm going off in the background. Thank you very much, Mayor. That's good and welcome news. We look forward to hearing more about really about everything. And I think that one thing that you will, of course, find is that this council will be enthusiastic to partner with you on anything that we can do to increase the supply of fair and affordable housing in the city of Lancaster. Thanks for your report, Mayor. That brings us to my report. I don't have one, but interesting fact, since I'm already wasting your time, there's a little thing called the Mrs. Murphy exception in the Fair Housing Act, and that is that the anti-discrimination clauses of the Fair Housing Act don't apply to private property that is owner occupied. So it doesn't apply to sort of like an owner occupied bed and breakfast. And the example is called that because, imagine poor little Mrs. Murphy, renting out 2 rooms in her home and, not being able to pick who she wants. And for a long time, this presented a significant issue with, for example, Airbnb and other similar services, because there's actually no federal law that prevents you from discriminating on the basis of race and a variety of other factors for rooms that you are renting out within your own home. Fun fact, but that's my report. So we go now to council comments. What do y'all have this evening? Okay. Going once, going twice. Hey, actually, I will take a moment to say this. It is March 23rd. And about this time a year ago, we were in part of our 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I just want to take a moment to thank all of you who are here on this call for bearing with the rapid and continuing changes that we have had to deal with as leaders of city government, shifts in the meeting, shifts in ordinances, how we live our lives, the effort I know that each of you have put into communicating with city residents whose lives have been upended by this pandemic, and of course to our city staff, particularly Ms. Strazo and Mr. Harris for making these digital meetings possible. It has been just an awful year. And now that it has been a year, I do want to take a moment to thank all of you personally for everything that you've done to keep the city of Lancaster going. Thank you. And with that, I will hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are adjourned. Stay safe, well, and healthy, all. Have a good night.
God bless everyone.